Come on. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me.
Sexual violence is an umbrella term that covers any form of attempted or completed unwanted sexual act done through coercion, which can happen to anyone despite the relationship to the perpetrator and within any setting. For a variety of reasons, the topic of sex is seldom discussed within family units, which can have a detrimental effect on the child's overall understanding of safe and consensual sex. While there are many factors contributing to acts of sexual violence, such as gender, substance abuse, or hostility, an inadequate or lack of sexual education is a major cause. Many studies suggest that a comprehensive sexual education is an effective method to reduce the risk of sexual violence. A comprehensive sexual education advocates for sex education to start as early as kindergarten, but I'd like to highlight the education that starts within homes. Parents can provide basic education on bodily autonomy and boundaries, which continues throughout the child's development into topics like healthy friendships, relationships, and eventually safe and consensual sex. What this promotes is not only a child's understanding of healthy relationships and sex, but also builds parent and child trust. Sexual violence, micro level interpersonal violence, cultural violence, and gender perspective are relevant key terms to my hypothesis. If parents were to be more involved in their child's sex education, then it can accelerate children's understandings of safe and consensual sex, which can then decrease the rate of sexual violence. But I also understand that with varying cultural values, changing parents' attitudes about sex may be difficult, which is why there is great importance in outside resources and programs to educate parents and their children on how to comfortably discuss sex. I conducted an ethnographic research project due to the personal observations and interviews. I got connected with the University of Hawaii's Title IX confidential resources.
The confidential advocacy program launched in July of 2020 last year. We provide services right now, specifically for Oahu campuses, confidential advocacy services for individuals, students, and employees who may be experiencing some kind of sex discrimination, sexual harassment, sex assault, intimate partner violence, and other gender based violence that might fall under our Title IX policy.
I produced a video to advocate for the confidential advocacy program as it faces budget cuts due to the COVID-19 pandemic. To accommodate to social distancing and health safety measures, I did my volunteer work remotely and connected with the confidential advocacy program via Zoom. To better understand the significance of this social issue, it helps to look at the micro, meso, and macro levels of analysis. At the micro level of analysis, Hawaii is the most ethnically diverse state in the nation, which suggests the variety of ideologies and belief systems influencing the portrayal of sex among different people. At the meso level of analysis, the United States is not a culturally homogeneous nation, so values, belief systems, and ideologies surrounding sex and sex education vary tremendously depending on families. Every 73 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted in some way, shape, or form. There is no national standard of law to punish sexual assault as it differs from state to state. Although early American colonies recognized rape as the common law, they only applied to white women aged 10 years or older up until 1861 when black women could file rape charges against white men. Prior to 1975, prosecutors could bring up a person's sexual history to justify the attack on that person. And up until 1993, marital rape was legal in many states. This goes to show historically how sexual violence is dealt with in this nation's justice system. At a macro level of analysis, sexual education may not be available to everyone if education in general isn't available. Various forms of sexual violence are present all over the world and has been recorded as early as the writings of ancient Greece and the Bible, up until this day and especially in underdeveloped countries. Some people may not recognize the severity of these forms of violence. According to a study done on sexual violence over time across 195 countries and territories, about 35.6% of women have experienced some form of sexual violence in their lifetimes. There is no statistic for men's experience because of how widely inaccurate the statistic may be with underreporting. Many justice systems across the world don't have laws punishing acts of sexual violence, and some countries even encourage sexual violence for religious or cultural purposes, all of which justifies the continuation.
That the whole safety and feeling comfortable, because it's the children who go to their parents first or their siblings or someone they would like to trust, And if that trust is established firsthand, at home, they don't have to find invalid sources outside. Because we want it to start at home, and that's why I think it's important for even parents and families together, maybe together as a family, can be educated on those facts and being safe.
My preliminary findings are that families do need to be involved in their child's understanding of sex, but it must be comprehensive and start once kids begin to show interest. Sex education in general, if it comes from a valid source, reduces the rate of sexual violence, but of course it is not an all-in solution. With sex education within families, there's an establishment of trust and it erases any shame, fear, or judgment when talking about these difficult topics. A few possible solutions are to take away the shame and fear from talking about sex, especially within households. Families also need to abolish the myths behind talking about sex. For one, sex education does not encourage partaking in sexual acts. This will not be easy considering religious or traditional backgrounds, but I theorize that focusing on the health aspect and prevention of sexual violence can encourage families to partake in more sexual education. Thus, promoting programs to help with this type of education for families is yet another solution.